Adults around the world have been forced to start working from home because of this coronavirus outbreak, but many of them don't want to go back to the traditional workplace. And, that's something that I suspected when this first started, that, people may take some time to get used to it, but the benefits outweigh some of the pitfalls, I would say. And here to talk a little bit more about it is Cheri Perry, who is a workplace culture expert. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, my pleasure.
So you can find out more about Cheri at cheriperry.com, and that's Cheri. First of all, how did you become a workplace culture expert, Cheri?
I think by doing all the things you're not supposed to do. Maybe that's a good place to start, right? A lot of times, we've owned a company for a national credit card processing company for 24 years, worked with thousands and thousands of people all across the country. And just over time, I began being invited in. How did you get your team to do that? How do you have such great service and so on? And so we began really focusing and kind of harnessing the power of experience and just watching what's going on. So I think it might be an accidental title, but I'll own it.
So, I love it because workplace culture changes all the time. And, I was just commenting before our segment, Cheri, that we have a newsman here, Joel, who comes to work no matter what. We're in radio, but he comes to work wearing a shirt and tie and suspenders every single day. And then, you have other radio folks that are coming in wearing yoga pants, So even just the workplace attire has changed over the years.
Absolutely. I was talking with a gentleman a few weeks ago who said, man, I would never go into work without wearing a shirt and a tie. And times are changing. And so it's very natural to see that workplace culture changes as well. And of course, a crisis brings out the best and the worst in people, and it does alter your workplace culture.
Well, when people started to have to work from home, we're now using the word pivot. Businesses are pivoting. They were setting up even call centers from someone's kitchen. It really did change the way people were doing things. But as the weeks in quarantine and weeks in stay-at-home orders have continued, more people that I speak with are enjoying their work from home because of the benefits. Benefits like having a flexible schedule. If you feel productive at 7 o'clock at night, you might not go back to the office then, but you can definitely go to your home office and start working at that point. What are business owners and managers thinking about this now?
Well, I think it's quite an interesting journey, and I think it's one that we can all gather hope from. So first of all, when we first got tossed into, hey, guess what? Today we're working from the office, tomorrow we're not. A lot of people were really frustrated, and I was answering phone calls like, hey, let's talk about what are the big pitfalls and how come people are so disappointed or depressed working from home. Of course, now that pendulum has swung a bit, and here's why. Because we're Americans, and we do what Americans do. Mm-hmm. We figure out whatever the situation is. We adapt, we learn, we adjust. And so I think what managers and business leaders need to be doing right now is they need to be encouraging the communication with their team that says, how is it going? What are you enjoying about it? Where are your struggles? And in that conversation, they will be able to identify the pros and the cons in their particular work environment. And they'll also be able to identify the pros and the cons for their particular team members. We are all wired differently. And that is so critically important to remember. I might really love the idea of working from home, but man, if I am wired to not be at home, if I need to be in a more confined environment, if I need to have interaction with more people, it's only a matter of time till I'm going to have some frustration working in an isolated environment.
Even as the stay-at-home orders are lifted across the country, and here in Michigan, we're looking at a stay-at-home order lifted on May 15th, and for restaurants and other sort of high-profile places, May 28th. Should employers be looking to offer a stay-at-home option for the employees who say, hey, I just don't feel comfortable coming back to work?
You're bringing up a really good point. Well, there's a couple of scenarios where employers and managers really do need to make sure that they're listening and that they are basically filling the need of their team. So if you are in a scenario where you have children at home and the lack of school or childcare has impacted your ability to return to work regardless of what the stay-at-home orders are, an employer is going to have to work around that. If you are in a scenario where you're maybe immunocompromised, we've got a staff member, for an example, who is working from home. And even if they lifted the orders today, I just don't think that she'd be quite ready to come back yet. I'm going to have to listen to that. Because at the end of the day, a workplace culture is defined by how you respond to what's going on in good times and in bad, and how you administer to the individual needs of your team. So all of this is basically going to open up that big C word, communication. We've got to talk about it. We've got to figure out what the best course of action is. And I don't think that there's just a, hey, this is the right thing to do and this is the wrong thing to do scenario. I think it's all over the board.
So if you're one of the employees that are trying to make this case for your boss, what are some of the things that you can point out to your boss as maybe a savings, a cost savings, or a benefit to the employer to start to implement more options for work from home?
I absolutely love this question for two reasons. One, it says personal responsibility. How do I play a role in getting the job, getting to be able to do my job the way I would like to do it? You have got to document your productivity like nobody's business. You've got to be Johnny on the spot when it comes to communicating with your boss, and you've got to tell them what you want. So many times in America, we forget we're not prisoners. Even if we're in a quarantine scenario, we have so many freedoms. If we say, listen, Mr. or Mrs. Manager, I love working from home. Here's why. I'm able to, get more done in a certain period of time. These are the things that I really feel like are productivity measurables. And submit your case and make sure that they understand and ask them questions. Hey, how could I be more productive? How can I add more value to the bottom line in the company and still keep my remote position? It's a two-way conversation, but when you design your life, nobody tells you that you can't ask for what you want.
The average office worker that was surveyed in a recent survey of office workers around the world really said that they spend nearly an hour just commuting to and from their job. So that's an average of 30 minutes each way, which is probably not too far off, even here in our local listening area, maybe 20, 25 minutes. You're not fighting the traffic. There's a lot of benefits there. But there's also the productivity that you talked about. And I know it's kind of been joked about, but, when people are working in an office and they're easily distracted by coworkers, there are people who were surveyed as well that said they probably spent an hour, if not more, not working while on the clock. So what about that as a benefit to your employer?
A lack of engagement is an issue that all businesses face before COVID. They'll face it during COVID. They'll face it after COVID. So engagement of your team is really, really important. So some of the stats, and stats are, if you look on the internet, you can find stats to support the pros and the cons. But I can tell you that you run the risk of employee disengagement whether you're in a remote environment or whether you're in the office. So do people have meaningful work that they want to do? Do they have clear expectations and guidelines of what need to be done? And are you communicating, right back to that C word again, are you talking about it and asking the kinds of questions that hopefully lead to a stronger bottom line and better engagement?
If you are the manager and you're just not sold on this, could that point to maybe other issues within the workplace? And, what I've heard from other managers who say, well, how am I going to know that they're actually getting these things done? I don't want them taking advantage of my time. If they don't want the job, then I can hire someone else who does want to come into the office. Are there, are there things that, that might point to a workplace culture that's already a bit toxic if you don't trust your employees?
Absolutely. In fact, I encourage all managers to get a little handheld mirror on their desk and look in the mirror and go, okay, hey, am I part of the problem here? Because I can tell you that before I was, quote unquote, a workplace culture expert, I was a workplace culture tyrant. I mean, it's just crazy what can happen when you recognize that, hey, I could be part of the challenge. I heard of a company that actually put video cameras so that they could watch their people working from home remotely. That
Wow.
is creepy as all get out
Yeah,
to
it
me.
is.
I'm just like, really? And people would do that. But here's the problem. If you don't have a scenario where you know that you've done your due diligence and hired the right people, of course you're going to have extra questions. So you've got to make sure, and this gives us all this whole crisis gives us an opportunity to really evaluate, how are we bringing on people? Are we bringing on people that have core values in alignment with what our company core values are? As a manager, have I tipped over the edge and maybe I want to, control everything? I mean, do I have a control issue? And some of those questions have some answers that are uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say that if you've got a scenario where you feel like you just have to measure and monitor and do every little tiny thing, man, you got to strike a balance between knowing what's going on, measuring and monitoring so you get some good results, but letting people do their job and not slipping over into the toxic type of management that really is over managing or micromanaging.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So when we start to come back to work, and if you're an employee and you're feeling a little, hesitant about doing that, maybe you don't want to do that, and your boss is steadfast, nope, this is how it is. Do you anticipate seeing even some workplace lawsuits coming up for people, like, as you said, who are not feeling comfortable coming back, who can work from home? Is that another reason to maybe offer this?
I would really guard against decisions that are fear-based.
Yeah.
I would certainly make sure as a company that I am documenting every single thing that I'm doing in the workplace to make it a safe environment, making sure that I'm taking every precaution. In our work environment, for an example, we've upped the number of times that we have people cleaning. We've reduced the number of people that we allow in our common areas. We've adjusted the way that we do our weekly team meetings. There's got to be a list of things that add some comfort and some assurances to people so that they feel like, I am walking back into a safe environment. I think that any decision that you're making from a standpoint of, hey, I don't want to get sued, I think it's dangerous.
Yeah.
I think that let's make decisions from the place that says, listen, if I was a staff member, what would I need to know about this work environment to make me want to come back? And if I was a staff member and I was giving a really good case for productivity, hey, maybe I need to consider that we might have some additional remote team members. Hey, before COVID-19, remote workplace accessibility was already on the rise.
Yeah.
It's definitely going to continue to be on the rise now. And some business leaders and managers are going to look at that bottom line and go, hey, wait a minute, there's some real advantages.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's interesting to me that according to the same survey we've been talking about, 48% of people, that's almost half of the workers, would take a pay cut to continue staying at home. That in itself speaks volumes about the benefits, I think, of stay-at-home work for some people.
Well, you and I could probably spend another whole session talking about pay, but I will tell you this. There are lots of people that are making a lot of money, and depending upon which report you read, a report I recently read said that on average, remote workers are making a little bit more than their counterparts. So again, it's a weighing and measuring, it's balancing, it's trying to figure out the bottom line, it's taking a look at the pros and the cons, the expenses, and also the human part of what are we doing as a company to attract and retain the best possible team members that we can. And flexible work environments are definitely part of that equation.
Well, Cheri Perry is a business strategist and workplace culture expert who works with companies and organizations from coast to coast. She learned under the legendary speaker, author, and motivator Zig Ziglar. She's a Ziglar Legacy Certified Trainer and Master Disc Trainer who's dedicated her life to improving the world one workplace at a time. I love that. Thank you so much for your time today, Cheri.
Hey, my pleasure. Have a great day.